Next Chapter Podcasts.
Did my card go through?
Oh no.
Your small business depends on its internet. So switch to Verizon Business. And you could get LTE business internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data for unlimited business.
There we go.
Get the internet you need at the price you want. Verizon Business. Starting price for LTE business internet, 25 megabits per second, unlimited data plan with select Verizon Business smartphone plan savings. Terms apply.
The world is growing more complicated by the day, but too often, everyone seems to be operating on the same old assumptions about global affairs. But if you're not sure that world domination by the United States is the right path for America or the world, or if you've got questions about conventional geopolitical thinking, you should check out American Prestige, a foreign policy podcast from a different perspective. Every week on American Prestige, historian and former Bernie Sanders foreign policy advisor Daniel Bessner, that's me, and my co-host, the journalist Derek Davison, analyze U.S. foreign policy from a critical framework that sheds light on myriad topics related to international affairs. So, if you're curious to know what U.S. foreign policy would look like if the interests of all people in the world, and not only rich Americans, were taken into account, then check out American Prestige at AmericanPrestigePod.com. That's AmericanPrestigePod.com. And you could, of course, also find us on your favorite podcast app.
We have a challenge before us, but I do believe that historically Black institutions provide a haven, provide a launching pad for our young people to do the work that's necessary to maintain democracy.
We knew about Spike Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, those kinds of figures in entertainment, or Chadwick Boseman. But when you had the political leaders come out of HBCUs in the last decade, that was important too, because that gave a seriousness to say, these are institutions that have rigorous programs and people have gone on and become very successful, and they are leading this nation.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and don't nobody want to hear it, but it's like this the South got something to say.
Hello, and welcome to Our New South, a podcast series presented by Levine Museum of the New South in Charlotte, North Carolina. Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South. To learn more and donate to projects like this, visit museumoftheNewSouth.org. Hi, my name is Kevin Blackistone of the Washington Post, coming to you from the University of Maryland, where I teach. And I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Robert Green II, a professor of history at Claflin University. Our New South Season 2 explores the complexities of the many New Souths that make up today's New South. The series highlights opportunities and challenges that different communities face, diving into censorship and healthcare, tourism and religion, struggles for rights and resources, and the global reverberations of New South culture.
We thank you for joining us on this journey and for making the show a Signal Award and Anthem Award winner. Follow the show, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, let's get to today's episode of the show.
The South got something to say.
Today's episode of Our New South focuses on historically Black colleges and universities.
We are really excited to have deeper conversations with our accomplished guest about a topic that has had a distinct impact on many people of color in the South and the world at large.
And as we mentioned in our introduction, Robert, you are a professor of history at an HBCU, Claflin University. So I feel like we have an expert insider here.
Well, I'll certainly do my best, Kevin.
Before we get to our guest, Robert, I would like to ask you to provide us with a brief history of HBCUs in the South.
Across the U.S. South, over 100 colleges and universities dot the landscape, all founded with a unique purpose and mission. These schools were founded for the express purpose of educating and uplifting Black Americans, making them distinct institutions in Southern and American society. Even after the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, these institutions continue to play a valuable role. They are historically Black colleges or universities, HBCUs, a designation crafted by the federal government in the 1965 Higher Education Act as, quote, any historically Black college or university that was established prior to 1964, whose principal mission was and is the education of Black Americans, end quote. The first historically Black college was the Institute for Colored Youth, now Cheyney University, founded in Pennsylvania in 1837. However, the vast majority of the 107 HBCUs in existence today are in the U.S. South. Many of them were opened either in the immediate aftermath of the American Civil War or a generation later as Jim Crow segregation began to grip the South. Some were founded as collaborations between New England abolitionists and former slaves. What, in his famous book, Souls of Black Folk, W.E.B. Du Bois referred to as, quote, the gift of New England to the freed Negro. Not alms, but a friend. Not cash, but character, end quote. These include schools such as Atlanta University, now Clark Atlanta, founded in 1865, Fisk University, founded in 1866 in Nashville, Tennessee, and Claflin University, founded in 1869 in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Howard University, called the Mecca by its alumni, was founded in 1867 in Washington, D.C., named after the leader of the Freedmen's Bureau, General Oliver O. Howard. A generation later, new schools were created to respond to the expansion of the Morrill Act in 1890. The original act designated the creation of land-grant colleges in the Midwest in 1862. The 1890 expansion also included the U.S. South, with the caveat that each southern state had to establish a land-grant college for both white and Black citizens of their states. This led to the creation of schools such as South Carolina State University, also in Orangeburg, in 1896. Even before that, southern state governments were creating land-grant institutions for Black Americans, such as Florida A&M University, Tallahassee, Florida, in 1887, and Tuskegee Institute, founded in 1881 in Tuskegee, Alabama. The irony of the existence of HBCUs is that many were set up to keep Black students out of white institutions of higher learning. Despite this, they became the incubators for the growth of the Black middle class. They also produced many of the key leaders of the 20th century civil rights movement. W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, Diane Nash, and Ella Baker, among many others, went to HBCUs. While predominantly white institutions, or PWIs, have opened their doors to Black students in the latter half of the 20th century, HBCUs still serve a vital role in the Black community. Most Black doctors and lawyers in the United States attended an HBCU as an undergraduate student. As a 2022 proclamation from the Biden White House stated, quote, we celebrate HBCUs for helping to make this country stronger and more inclusive, and we continue to champion and reinforce the ongoing achievements of these institutions. Because we know that when they succeed, America succeeds, end quote. A recent spike in the number of Black students attending HBCUs has been attributed to a variety of factors, including the Black Lives Matter movement, concern from Black students and parents alike about the racial climate at PWIs, and a genuine longing among Generation Z Black Americans to be in Black spaces where they feel secure. Programs such as the UNCF Mellon Program and the Thurgood Marshall College Fund aid students at HBCUs to go on to achieve their dreams of higher education. While for most Americans, HBCUs may be known for their college football marching bands, to Black Americans represent the dreams and aspirations of ancestors who were once denied the right to read and write, and once free, determined that an education was their best path to preserve, protect, and defend that freedom.
Our first guest is Dr. Walter Kimbrough. Kimbrough has had a long and illustrious career in higher education, serving as the president of Philander Smith College and Dillard University, and is currently the interim president of Talladega College. Our New South welcomes Dr. Walter Kimbrough.
And we have on with us today Dr. Walter Kimbrough of Talladega College. So normally on the show, we first ask our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. So could you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do for a living?
Okay. So I am currently serving as the interim president of Talladega College in Alabama. Will be here for this year. Had a chance to be president of two HBCUs, Dillard University in New Orleans. I was there for 10 years, and Philander Smith College in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was there for 7.5 years. But I grew up in Atlanta, born in Chicago, but Atlanta is home. Grew up as a United Methodist preacher's kid. My mom actually taught religion and philosophy at Clark Atlanta. So That's a part of their background. Grew up, wanted to be a veterinarian. Went to a math and science high school in Atlanta. I went to the University of Georgia because they have a great veterinary school. I got into vet school after 3 years. And after the first month or so, I was like, oh, I want to do this anymore. It's not what I want to do. But I was very active on campus and had a chance to talk to a college president, Walter Washington, who was at Alcorn State. I was like 21 and said, I think I might want to be a president. And he put me on the path. And I first became a president 20 years ago, actually. I was 37. So I was really, really, really young. But that's sort of been my passion, to work on campuses and work with students. So that's sort of what I do. But yeah, I'm a native of Atlanta. So I always make sure I represent that. Particularly, it was funny living in New Orleans for the last 12 years. We've got that, whole history there. Even like today on social media, people are saying, who's the best rapper, Lil Wayne or T.I.? I was like, T.I., come on, it's Atlanta. I mean, so that's just who I am.
Well, I will tell you, as a Georgia native, I am decisively in your side of that debate. So no problems for me at all about that T.I. versus Lil Wayne argument. But,
right.
We really happy to have you on to talk about HBCU culture and tradition and history. And I want to start off our conversation dealing with that by reading to you a passage from W.E.B. Du Bois' The Souls of Black Folk. Of course, that's the work that he's arguably best known for today. And in that particular book, he has a couple of chapters that deal with the importance of Black colleges and universities. And in 1903, Du Bois wrote the following, quote, "The function of the Negro college, then, is clear. It must maintain the standards of popular education. It must seek the social regeneration of the Negro, and it must help in the solution of problems of race contact and cooperation. And finally, beyond all this, it must develop men." Now, as someone who has devoted his adult life to HBCUs, what do you think the purpose of an HBCU is today, in particular with the training of, as Du Bois said, Black men?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've seen that quote, and I still agree. In many regards, HBCUs are key pillars of Black communities. If you think about Black communities, you think about schools, which include HBCUs. You think about the Black church and Black families. So that's a part of it. Robert Franklin, who had been president of Morehouse College, wrote a book called Crisis in the Village, and he talked about those anchor institutions. So HBCUs have always been a part of that, which is what Du Bois is talking about. And I think that we still are sort of caretakers of the culture for a lot of things that happen within Black communities. So I think that's what we have to focus more on. It becomes more challenging today because a lot of our talk about higher education is really about credentials. We don't talk as much about how do we build men and women up? How do we teach them certain things that they need to know in terms of how to navigate in society and move along professionally? HBCUs did that a lot. There was really much more pressure prior to the 1960s when you really could act in place of the parent. That's when you had in loco parentis. That changes, but I still think that there is a value in some of that really personal connection with students and families that you help develop the entire person, which is what Du Bois is talking about.
And a quick follow-up, what does that formation look like for Black men and women in the South in the 21st century?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it is making sure that they understand the times that we live in terms of there has been a lot of progress in the country, but we still see that there are factors that are in place that disproportionately impact Black people in a negative light. And we can just go through the litany, whether it's access to education or healthcare, or you just name it in terms of how we are engaging with law enforcement, all of those kinds of things. So we still need a group of people who will really step up to say, I want to lead on those issues, to make sure that students are fully aware of those issues and not just, I think there should be a kind of education and conversation that you have at HBCUs that you're not going to have at other types of institutions. And so that becomes embedded in those classroom discussions so that a student doesn't go out, for example, recently, my wife took my son and two of his friends to New Orleans Pelicans basketball game. And so he had two of his friends who were white friends. And so, my son and my wife, and my son is wearing a Trae Young jersey. And it's one of the Martin Luther King jerseys that the Hawks wear in their city uniform. And so his two white friends are saying, and they're all in 10th grade, like, what is MLK? So it's just going to be some things that they don't know. And you're thinking, yeah, this is 2024. But, for white kids, MLK doesn't just Atlanta just resonate. And so, but you have Black students who will come from environments that haven't had that kind of conversation. And particularly at Dillard, when I talked to students and asked them why they came to Dillard, they were like, I'm coming to a place where I can help learn about myself because I realize I've been in these very integrated environments and they're teaching me nothing about who I am as a person.
That's interesting. The name of our show is Our New South. And so we really kind of hone in on that phrase New South and what the iteration of it is today. And so since you've talked about the role of HBCUs today versus what Du Bois pleaded, what has been the impact of HBCUs just on the South? And what is that impact today and how critical is it to the things that we see going on in the South?
So historically, there's a book by another former Morehouse president, John Wilson, where he really talks about HBCUs were single-handedly responsible for educating and I guess making a whole group of people literate post-slavery. And he chronicles the amount of people that became literate in a short amount of time. And that was largely due to the work of HBCU. So that becomes sort of like the background for it. I would say that second wave would be in terms of HBCUs that produced the women and men who led the civil rights movement. And I always just tell people it's sort of hard to name people in the civil rights movement and not mention somebody who went to an HBCU. In fact, overwhelmingly, those are HBCU graduates. And so I think today you're seeing a new generation of these HBCU graduates that are playing an oversized role in American politics and education. And, for example, we look the first, Black vice president, HBCU grad, my home state of Georgia, the work that Stacey Abrams did running for governor, HBCU grad, helping Raphael Warnock get elected, HBCU grad, current chair of the Georgia Democratic Party, Nikema Williams, graduate of Talladega College, Keisha Lance Bottoms, went to my rival high school in Atlanta, former mayor of Atlanta, those kinds of things, HBCU grad. So you're seeing these folks, this new wave of people who are in their, 40s and 50s now really stepping up to be, as we talk about the New South, that this is a new generation of HBCU grads, which I'm grateful for, that we just don't have to always keep talking about Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson and John Lewis. You have some new names that are doing some really great things on a national level in lots of different areas, which I think is exciting as well.
And already HBCUs have seen an increase in applications and enrollment, certainly since the murder of George Floyd.
Right.
So this is probably something that's going to continue. And so what in your mind is the attraction right now to HBCUs, especially given the fact that you have all of these other choices that students can make coming out of high school, as you did,
right,
to be a dog at the University of Georgia?
Yeah. So I think the thing that has happened now, for me, growing up in Atlanta public schools all the way through. So I was in 95% Black environments, K through 12. So I was like, my dad pastored big churches in Atlanta, 7,500 members. So I had plenty of Black experience to say, yeah, let me go see what Georgia's like. But I'm seeing the opposite now because students are growing up we still have high levels of segregation, but I'm meeting more Black students who are going to integrated schools, just like both of my kids did. My daughter's a freshman at Fordham University in New York. And then my son is he's in an all boys Catholic school in New Orleans that's all Black. So this is his first experience like that. But just to have those kinds of experiences, I am meeting a new generation of student that wants that experience. They're looking at what's happening nationally, and they've I've dealt with the racism in high school. I just want to be at a place where I can just be a student. So, you go to a place and you don't have people on campuses, questioning why are you there or asking, are you an athlete? When people don't like you, they just don't like you at HBCU. It's not because you're Black. And I've heard that from so many students to say, I dealt with that in high school. Like I said, I didn't experience it in high school. I was all Black high school. But they're just like, I just want to be at a place where I can just be me and be with my people and learn about who I am. And of course, it doesn't hurt that the Supreme Court ruled on affirmative action. So now you're having a lot of people saying those places don't want me anyway. So let me just, go to those institutions. The only caveat I put on that is that it's not evenly spread out. So your big brand name HBCUs are killing it right now. Clark Atlanta University reported that they had more freshman applications than the University of Georgia, which is crazy because UGA has 10 times as many students. So that's the kind of interest, but it's a brand name school in the Atlanta University Center, and Atlanta is always hot for Black people. Everybody wants to be there. So that's a part of it. But if you're, smaller rural schools, like a place like Talladega, you don't get the same kind of interest because, it's sort of like, Orangeburg has done, last time I was there recently, spoke at a December commencement a couple years ago. So I've seen some growth there, and you're not far from the capital. So that's not bad, but it's still not the same as the Howards, the Hamptons, North Carolina A&T, FAMU. The big brand name schools are just, it's just crazy for them right now. They really have too many applications. So it's not evenly, balanced. But overall, the interest in HBCUs have gone up. The enrollment has gone up as well. But there's still a number of particularly small private schools that are struggling.
And I would have to say, too, before we go any further, hey, folks listening to this podcast, if you have a son or daughter applying to an HBCU, don't forget about Claflin and Talladega. We're more than happy to have your son or daughter come to our school as well. But you're right. It is interesting to see how HBCUs have returned to public prominence in some ways, in part because of recent political events, both with the affirmative action ruling and also with the rise of Black Lives Matter. And I want to now talk a bit about culture at HBCUs. Now, you yourself, you've written extensively about Greek life at HBCUs and how unique a tradition that is. Could you talk a bit about how Greek life is very important, in particular to schools in the South, and especially to HBCUs? Because I even see it here at Claflin in a way I don't see it at other, say, PWIs, for example.
Right. Well, I think the difference, I think those organizations play a critical role on all campuses for Black students. It's a little bit different at a PWI because in many regards, that becomes part of your safe space within the larger institution, that you've got your group of people, and that group a lot of times is responsible for providing social life for the rest of the Black students on campus. So they play a role too. The difference at HBCUs is that they're much more ingrained in the entire history of the institution. So when you look at a place like Talladega, which is, founded in 1867, you get your first Greek chapters here in the 1920s. That's going to be part of it. Plus, then there are physical markers on campus to show that these organizations are very important. So you see the plots on the campus. You don't have like a big fraternity row like you would have at Georgia or Maryland or a place like that. But you've got these plots, these places, and particularly during homecoming, the members come back and they meet at these spaces on campus. Though all of those things, I think, add to it, but they just become just an integral part of the history of the organization because they've been there for a long time and they've been central in the history of those groups and the development of the groups. And I think that's why they play a larger role in just the culture on that campus, and particularly in the South. But like I said, you can still see some of that other parts of the country as well. But HBCUs in the South, it's going to be that part of it. So it's going to be Greek life. It's going to be football. It's going to be the band. And band culture, of course, is very different at HBCUs and PWIs. And that adds to it, too. So when you start to put all those together, you have this very unique culture on a lot of HBCU campuses that I think is very important.
One of the things that we've noticed in this New South is the impact of immigration from all around the world. It was kind of stunning. Did not think of that. And just wondering, what has been the impact of immigration on HBCUs, and so many are in the South, and have those institutions been able to absorb this diversity of people coming into the South?
Yeah, so a part of, and particularly for graduate programs, you'll see a lot of international students at HBCUs. There's always a large number on your faculty, which we see in a lot of colleges and universities as well. So I don't think that's anything different, but you see a lot. On our campus here, we're about 7% international. It's ironic because today I've been doing some one-on-one meetings with students. So I'm talking to students from Guyana, Lagos, Nigeria, Jamaica, the Bahamas, Brazil. So all across this diaspora, I'm seeing these students on this campus, and I see them If you look at our baseball team here at Talladega, I mean, it's very heavily populated by students from Latin America. I mean, just very strong because baseball is strong in Latin America. So we see that on our campus. So there is, I think we see a lot of that in terms of the campuses, and there are a lot of ways to be able to do that. But I think it's not unusual, like I said, particularly within your faculty ranks, and particularly for graduate programs, you see a lot of diversity at HBCUs as well as I think you see a lot of places in higher education.
There's also been a diversity of funding for HBCUs. We were noting that Mackenzie Scott has donated $500 million to HBCUs over the past 4 years. Rhonda Stryker and William Johnston, $100 million to Spelman. And obviously the Biden administration, which you've paid a lot of attention to in contrast to the Trump administration and what they've donated. What has that influx of new funding meant for HBCUs?
Well, so some of it is just raising awareness. The Mackenzie Scott money was game changing in so many ways because we had never seen somebody who just came out of the woodwork and giving money. It made people start saying like, Oprah who? Because, people always thought Oprah would be the person. Mackenzie Scott, she went through that first round, and these were unique gifts because they were basically completely unrestricted. With those types of gifts, normally they say you have to do this, this, and this. But, we got to gift that dealer. And it was like you get this email out the blue to say, hey, I have a, client that wants to make a donation. And you're just sort of like, okay, yeah, right. And then you look up the person and say, okay, this is a real firm. And then I say, okay, well, let's talk. And they call you and I'm out running errands because you just don't really know. And they're like, yes, Mackenzie Scott, she's going to give you $5 million. I'm like, okay, let me pull over for a minute because this is like for real. And so she provided some of those kinds of things that I think was, it just raised another level of profile for the institutions. So we saw that. We saw some individuals doing things. We saw Robert Smith when he, forgave about $30 million of loan debt for Morehouse College students. You've had Netflix founder Reed Hastings did about $120 million for Morehouse, Spelman, and UNCF. So we're seeing more of those kinds of things, which is great. And then the Biden administration has been the most aggressive in proposing to Congress. Congress still has to fund, but he's asked for more money than anybody's asked, and it's not even close. So he always went really, really big, saying, let's really push the envelope. And of course, Congress is going to be a little bit more conservative. But I think for him being aggressive like that, and then doing things sort of, like having the secretaries of agriculture and education write the southern states that had land grant HBCUs to say, okay, since 1987, you guys collectively have, owed these institutions, tens of billions of dollars. You need to make this right. And so they're sending letters to people in Tennessee and Florida and Georgia and Alabama, all over the place, Arkansas. So all of those things have been, I think, very important just to keep raising the profile because HBCUs are doing some of the hardest work when you deal with these, first generation Pell Grant eligible students. So you see philanthropists recognizing some of that, but you see the federal government really leaning in. And I always like to tell people, too, HBCUs are one of the few entities that do normally receive bipartisan support. And it's just in a very divided country, HBCUs can get a lot of Democrats and Republicans to get together for funding. Even times when, President Trump wanted to cut funding out, the Republicans said, no, we're funding this. I mean, it was almost unilaterally. So those are the kinds of things I think are very important. But once again, there's still so much more that needs to be done because when you're under-resourced institution serving under-resourced people, you need extraordinary resources. And we still haven't gotten to that third part of it. But more people are recognizing the work that these institutions do.
To kind of close out our wonderful conversation today, we usually ask our guests about Southern cuisine. And as a lifelong Southerner, I have to know, what are some of your favorite Southern dishes?
So for me, it's going to be very basic. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, sweet tea with lemon. That's it. That's a perfect meal. I don't need anything else. That's perfect for me. I'm done.
Sugar in your cornbread or not?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's got to be sweet. Yeah. If it's not sweet, that's not cornbread. Everything's got to be sweet. Not your greens. You want your greens to taste like they're supposed to. But yeah, no, cornbread needs to be sweet. And that sweet tea needs to be sweet, with that lemon in there too. Yeah.
Man, well, this has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm really glad that we got you on this.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Our next guest on this episode of Our New South is Dr. Cynthia Spence. Spence is an Associate Professor of Sociology and Director of UNCF Mellon Programs at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. Our New South welcomes Cynthia Spence. Dr. Spence, as always, we welcome folks to the podcast by first asking you to tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and your relationship to the South.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I want to say that my relationship to the South, first of all, it probably centers everything else that I do. I am a Southern girl. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm one of the rare native Atlantans here. We're, the city where everybody wants to come and they're from elsewhere. My mother was even an Atlanta native. So I'm a second generation Atlanta native. Of course, growing up, all we heard about was clearly, first of all, it was assumed that we all would go to college. And certainly Spelman College was a family kind of institution. My mother attended Spelman, but came out her second year, got married, had 5 children, the whole story. And then ended up through various careers, ended up being an administrative assistant at Morehouse College. And she said that, I saw all those students all the time and I decided I'm going to go back. And so she did. She ultimately finished Spelman in 1991. And at that time, clearly I had finished Spelman. My sister finished Spelman College and I had returned to Spelman after graduate school. I've been at Spelman all of my adult life, and that is no exaggeration. I finished in 1978 and returned in 1981, and have held several positions at Spelman, starting off, of course, as an instructor, but I was moved to the dean's office very early. I was very young, like 26 years old, was an assistant dean for first-year students, then became the associate academic dean, and then became the academic dean. So I was in the dean's office for 17 years. And through that time, was able to really just fortify my love for this institution, the institution that I call home, and also be able to work with students in a variety of initiatives. One initiative is the UNCF Mellon Programs. I started off as a campus coordinator when I was in the dean's office because, at our institutions, everything just, piles on your desk. But from my work as a campus coordinator, I was asked to assume the position of director of the UNCF Mellon Programs. And so I still direct those programs. Fortunately, after 17 years of service in the dean's office, I asked to be released and returned to the classroom. And so my balancing of the directorship of the UNCF Mellon Programs and teaching became a bit easier than trying to balance it with being in the dean's office. And then lastly, Spelman, we adopted a tagline in the kind of mid 2010, 2011 that was a choice to change the world. Spelman women make a choice to change the world. And because of my interest in doing service learning work, I went for a grant to actually establish the social justice program at Spelman College. So all of this kind of comes out of who I am, a child of the South, a child who's always been exposed to the upliftment of my people, Black people, someone who's always been challenged to do your very best, but also someone who has also been groomed to do social justice work. And so now I land very happily still at Spelman, teaching a course. I'm teaching a couple of courses and directing the social justice program and directing the UNCF Mellon programs.
And, I have to say to the audience, I've been fortunate to get to know you through the UNCF Mellon Mays program. I am an assistant professor of history at Claflin University and HBCU in Orangeburg,
Yes.
from which I'm broadcasting right now. And what you just said makes it clear that you are as Atlanta as Outcast or Lemon Pepper Wings or the Varsity. But I am curious, you did briefly go to Rutgers for your advanced degrees and you came back to Spelman. Mm-hmm. What was it that told you to come back home to the South? Why was that so important to you?
it's just my life. The South, and let me just say, that growing up as a Black girl in the South, I was exposed to communities of folks that, became, what sociologists call your fictive kin, so my kin folks were here in Atlanta. So I went to Rutgers, never with any intention of not returning home.
Right. And as someone who's an HBCU grad now works at an HBCU, I think you are uniquely qualified to talk about why HBCUs are so important here and now. And so my question to you is, why and how are HBCUs still important to the South today? I think there's an assumption that in the decades since Brown v. Board, the desegregation of higher education and K through 12, there might be a question of, well, why do we still have HBCUs? Why are they important? But you're making it quite clear they still have an importance to play even now.
Oh, yeah, Robert. I just think that HBCUs, first of all, provide safe space for young Black people who wish to go on to advance their careers, to give back to society. And what we know is that Black students at our institutions, they are taught that there's an expectation that you're going to do something with your work. We want you to go off, make the money that you want to make, but we expect you to give back. And that comes out of our very founding, because we were founded as an act of social justice, right? All of our institutions were founded as examples of social justice. We created a way out of no way for Black people across the South. And we continue to see that kind of very founding ideology, no matter who the founders were. There's a consistency across our institutions that says that these institutions are invested in the Black community. They're invested in the uplift of the Black community. And so here we are 130 years, 140 years, depending upon where your institution is. We still are saying the same thing. I believe that this past election showed that if no one else is committed to democracy, Black people are, especially Black women. And we have been consistently fighting for a democratic society. And so we are the leaders. We are the leaders that will, in fact, push this society to live up to its promises. And so we won't get discouraged. But, the next 4 years may, in fact, place things in front of us that suggest that all of the work, all of the efforts that we've been involved in don't matter. But it's up to Black institutions to dismantle any kind of mythology that's going to be created, any kind of untruths that will be created. And so we have a challenge before us. But I do believe that historically Black institutions provide a haven, provide a launching pad for our young people to do the work that's necessary to maintain democracy.
And of course, Dr. Spence, you've not only spent your lifetime at an HBCU, but at an HBCU for women.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned your Spelman College Social Justice Fellows Program, and you were quoted once as saying that you are, quote, committed to helping Spelman women fully actualize their commitment to making a choice to change the world through social justice advocacy. And so my question is, why have you focused on women of color, particularly Black women? And what is their historical and current role in the social justice movement, and why is it so critical?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's so important to lift up Black women as being historical figures in social justice advocacy. In the social justice residence hall, if you were to come, you would see that there's a mural there for all of our students to take in. And we begin with that mural highlighting the faces of women since the early 19th century to the present, Black women who've been committed to social justice. So we have Ida B. Wells. I mean, she did amazing quantitative study on lynching in our country that was brought, and as a journalist, she was able to bring that to the forefront so that people would really understand the intensity of those just tragic instances that are part of our history. We have Anna Julia Cooper, who talked about a voice from the South, and she was talking about Black women's voices from the South. So we have, individuals like folks who are in the legal field. We have individuals in the medical field, the public health field, primarily because we want our students to, number one, see themselves in these women, but to also, with our new, these millennials and Gen Zers, sometimes they think that their idea is the most novel idea in the world. No one ever thought about it before, right? And so we want to affirm them and their ideas and their commitments to social justice, but we want them to understand there's a lineage that must be recognized, because oftentimes our stories are not recognized. We have Rosa Parks, of course, on the mural, but people think of Rosa Parks as the person who sat down on the bus, right? We know that story, but they don't know who Rosa was. Rosa fought against sexual violence throughout the Southeast. And so our students have to read at the dark end of the street so they can understand the fullness of Black women's stories as activists.
What makes a young Black woman come to an all-women's college as opposed to going to Claflin or Howard or across the street to one of the other colleges in the center?
I think, it's in Atlanta. Spelman has a stellar reputation. We're in the Atlanta University Center. So it's a single sex experience in a coeducational environment. Our students are coming to be credentialed. They want to receive a quality educational experience. Now, if we were at I don't know where else Spelman could be. I don't know if they would be as attractive to Spelman, but I believe that they would, because they really are centering, and their parents are centering their educational experience about outcomes. So I don't know that they're thinking about it being, they know it's a single sex institution, but they're not coming in the good old days, where they would say that, places like women's college, like Wellesley and Spelman, they were like finishing schools and they were coming to get hooked up with some, get married. That's not who our students are. They know it's a single sex institution. They know that, and they're fine with it. But probably it being in the AUC helps. It being in Atlanta helps. But we're here to produce women who are going to actually make changes. You look at our graduates, Stacey Abrams, Roz Brewer, LaTanya Richardson. I mean, our graduates say to them, you should go to Spelman if you want to be able to take that next step, to whatever that career opportunity might be. And then the fact that it's single sex maybe becomes an afterthought. It sure is, right? But that's not a driver for our students.
And certainly I've had the good fortune to encounter plenty of women, even in South Carolina, who are Spelman graduates, and there is a certain confidence that they all have about them. I can assure you of that. I want to talk a bit more about this idea of the larger mission of HBCUs. And first off, by getting at your work with the UNCF Mellon Program, could you explain a bit about what you do there and why UNCF Mellon is so important to folks at HBCUs?
Well, the UNCF Mellon Program, funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, is a part of a collective of institutions all across the country that are preparing students to go on to graduate school to attain the PhD, to become college professors. And without going into a lot of detail about the history, the programs were created to solve a problem. The then president of the Mellon Foundation had been president of Princeton University. And when he was attending varied meetings of the elite institutions, he always noticed that there weren't many Black faculty members or faculty of color. And so that's why the programs were created. So for us, I serve as the director of the consortium of institutions, UNCF, for Mellon only. Clearly, UNCF does a lot of other work, but I serve as the director. And what we're doing on campuses within the UNCF cohort of institutions is identifying students very early on, placing them on the track to go on to become college professors. Through the UNCF programs, we've produced 166 PhDs. Here's the challenge. Of those 166 PhDs, probably only about 5 have gone back to HBCUs to become college professors. They're college professors all over the country. And that's a good thing because we want to diversify the academy. There in total, including UNCF, there are about 1,100 former students who've gone through Mellon programs. So you got like 1,100 PhDs all over the country teaching.
You've mentioned HBCUs as a safe space, number one, but then you also said that when you're at an HBCU, like say a Spelman, for example, you may learn about certain things that you may not learn about at a PWI counterpart.
Yeah.
We've been talking to several folks this season on Our New South about book bans across the South, about Stop Woke Act in Florida, about all these initiatives that are designed to really foster a sense of anti-intellectualism across the South and around the country. Do you see HBCUs as playing a unique and pivotal role in the fight against book bans, against anti-intellectualism, and in favor of Black history, Black studies, and so forth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, Spelman for over 30 years has had a required course for all of our students called the African Diaspora and the World. Can't go through Spelman without taking that course. And what it was designed to do was to replace kind of Western civilization. I mean, you still are getting that information, but you start with Africa at the center. And so you learn about literature and arts and history, but using a Black lens. Clearly, that would not be an acceptable course on some of these campuses, right? Critical race theory is all that we do. Right? I mean, we were doing critical race theory before you even had a name for critical race theory. That's what we do because, again, it's connected to our founding. The scholars, our students, and we emphasize this with our Mellon Fellows as well because we know they're going into grad school. The scholars that we introduce them to, they are in conversation with the canonical text. So our students, sociology, they're going to learn about Mills. They're going to learn about Goffman, all of the white scholars, right? Who did important work, important social commentary. But they're going to be in conversation with Black scholars, right? Who use their work, right? And so it's important for us at Spelman, and I would imagine Claflin, that we're teaching the canon. That's why our students get into graduate schools. But we want our students to understand that the canon of our disciplines, that there are other people of color who have used the canon to do their own analyses that are perhaps more relevant to them as Black people living in a diverse world.
It is interesting that our podcast is called Our New South. And of course, you're based in Atlanta, which has been the capital of several New Souths over the last 100 plus years. But when you hear that phrase New South, as a daughter of the South, as a daughter of Atlanta, as a Spelmanite, the Spelmanite, so to speak, what does that phrase mean to you in 2024?
Yeah, I hear it oftentimes, and I think in some ways it's flattering, to lift up the South. I will tell you that sometimes I'm concerned because I want to make certain that individuals understand that there is, in fact, kind of a culture of the South that has been here for hundreds of years. And a lot of times, when we hear stuff, people say new, it means like they want to divorce themselves from, what existed. And so I will embrace this notion of New South as long as we understand that it stands on the ground of individuals who created the South, Black folk who gave their lives for the South, Black folks who died in this place we call the South, Black folks who've been progressive. I mean, clearly in the city of Atlanta, I've always been around people who were civil rights leaders, doctors, lawyers. I mean, that's what I was exposed to. So let's not forget that, right? When we talk about New South, right?
We have seen in recent years an uptick in outsiders and philanthropists giving money to HBCUs. Why do you think this has been important? Because this is a relatively recent development. We've seen folks give money to Morehouse, give money to a variety of HBCUs. Number one, why is this important? Number two, what does this say about the importance of HBCUs in the 21st century and in the years to come?
Yeah, well, gifts mean investment, that individuals are making an investment that they believe will, in fact, yield significant outcomes. And I believe that HBCUs and their contributions are becoming even better known. I'm not going to say known because I think people have always known, but even better known. And certainly with the Rhonda Stryker gift, she's been on our board for many years. So clearly she understands who we are, what we do. The Mackenzie Scott, I'm not sure, who advised her, but, she made amazing contributions across the country, not just the institutions of higher education, but other entities as well. When you invest your money, you're expecting a particular yield. And Spelman and many of our institutions have proven that we do, in fact, produce, that there will be results, that your money is not in vain. And so I hope that continues because it's the interest among potential students grows for all of our institutions. We do need those funds. We need those private dollars so that we can continue to deliver the product.
Thank you so much. This was, again, a really informative interview. And I hope that folks listening to this, if they have, children who are thinking about college or university, take a look at Spelman, take a look at Claflin, because
Yes.
HBCUs still have a lot to say about the world we live in.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
All right, Kevin. Well, we were fortunate enough to have two experts of HBCU life and culture on the show today. Dr. Walter Kimbrough, president of Talladega University, and Dr. Cynthia Spence, sociologist at Spelman College, and also the head of the UNCF Mellon Program. I think both of them were pretty passionate about why HBCUs still matter even in 2025. And even as someone who works in HBCU, I think I learned a thing or two as well about the culture and traditions of our historically Black colleges and universities.
Yeah, and by the way, Robert, I consider you one of the experts. So there were three experts on this particular episode. And what struck me about it is that when I think about HBCUs and the history of HBCUs, at the beginning, that was not a choice, right? It was a place where, for higher education, the progeny of enslaved Africans had to go. But now we see an uptick in applications to HBCUs at a time when the progeny of enslaved Africans can go to any school in the country that they wish. And I love the fact that Dr. Kimbrough and Dr. Spence both outlined reasons as to why students are now choosing to go to HBCUs in almost record numbers. And it speaks to the not only the history of HBCUs, but the continued contributions that they make to Black society, but also to society at large. And we can just go through the long list of names who are active right now in changing this society, all of whom come from HBCUs. It's really impressive.
And at the same time, we don't want to forget that HBCUs have also given rise to a lot of fun and creative things in Black culture, such as the marching bands, Fried Chicken Wednesdays, the various Divine Nine fraternities and sororities.
That's right.
All of these things are important components of HBCU life, and by extension are important parts of Black life in America. We don't want to forget that either.
Absolutely not. And after listening to Dr. Spence talk about the entire history of Spelman and all of her family then went to Spelman and what Spelman does for Black women, I was ready to fill out an application for my daughter when she's ready to go to college.
And I'm pretty sure Dr. Spence would love to see that application come in pretty soon. Now, I think what's interesting, though, is with this episode on HBCUs, it's a perfect segue into our next episode, which is about religion. As we all know, religion in the South is a very important part of Southern life, but I think our listeners might be a bit surprised which directions we go in terms of talking about religion in the New South of the 21st century.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this, the South got something to say.
Our New South is presented by Levine Museum of the New South. Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South. To learn more and donate to projects like this, visit museumofthenewsouth.org.
Our New South is produced by Next Chapter Podcast. Thanks to editor and sound designer Kyle Murdoch, producers Brian Douglas, Alexander Piñeres, and Cliff Whitfield, senior producer and writer Byron Hunter, and executive producers Jeremiah Tittle and Frankie Abbott. Please follow the show, subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Learn more at nextchapterpodcast.com/Our New South.
Thanks for listening.
The South got something to say.
Next Chapter Podcasts.